Michael Jordan is not only the best basketball player, but he's the most exciting basketball player to ever play.
Tatum fires away, pumps it in, 51 for Jason Tatum.
The Big Three NBA podcast is powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Big Three NBA podcast. Sherrod Blakely, Washburn, Kwani Lunis. The Celtics now know who their opponent will be in the second round of the NBA Eastern Conference, well, the semifinals. They're playing the Cavaliers. The Celtics, as you know, won the series season, the regular season, 2-1 against the Cavs. All three games decided by single digits. So that being said, what do you both think will be the expectation for the Celtics in this series?
More the same. Finish them off in short work. Don't play with your food. Just beat them in 5, maybe 6 games, and just go into the conference finals. The Celtics are, to me, they're at a point now where it's like they put away the Heat in 5 games, and they really didn't have that 1 or 2 or 3 really good games. They just had stretches where they played well, but you still feel as though they're not quite at the level that they were in the regular season, and that's okay because they're still finding ways to win. I think Cleveland is going to be a different kind of challenge, but one that I don't expect them to have a lot of difficulty getting past and moving on to the conference finals.
I expect the Celtics to just play well in this series, and they're a more conventional opponent. Obviously, you're not dealing with the Miami Heat. You're not dealing with a bunch of junk defenses. You're not dealing with a team that's had your number over the last couple of years. You're dealing with a team that took 7 games to beat Orlando, that definitely showed, as much as it showed its strengths with Donovan Mitchell and the defense of Evan Mobley, it definitely showed its weaknesses. They looked terrible in games 3 and 4. Only Donovan showed up for game 6, and then they were able to come back from an 18-point deficit in game 7. And I think most of that was just Orlando could not score. Like, they just stopped scoring. Banchero was the only one who put some points on the board, and their offense just went to completely shut down when Cleveland was able to pull away. So I think if you're the Celtics, you come out punching. This team is tired. They don't have a great, like a top 10 coach. They have a solid coach in J.D. Bickerstaff. The players are, Donovan Mitchell, an perennial all-star. Garland's a good player. But this team doesn't have a great bench either. They should be able to outlast Cleveland. And if they come out focused, ready to play, this should be a 5 or 6 game series max.
And along those lines, Gary, the other thing, too, to keep in mind as the series progresses is that they're going to be playing every other day. And to go from a 7-game series the way that Cleveland did, and then to start playing every other day, slowly but surely, actually probably not that slowly, it's going to, frankly, leave you a little sluggish. The Celtics, I think, have a great opportunity to just, as Gary pointed out, come out swinging, because you know that this team, in order to hold their own, that's going to take a lot out of them, and they have not had much recovery time since their last series. And so I think that's something that the Celtics are going to be able to take advantage of as the series progresses.
As we look at the series, 2 big factors for both teams is their big men. As we know, Porzingis is not expected to play in this series. It looks like Jarrett Allen, his status is still up in the air with a rib injury right now. But who do you guys think their absence would be a bigger deal for their respective teams?
I say Jarrett Allen. I think the Celtics are used to playing without Porzingis. They played 25 games without him this year. Jarrett Allen's their main cog in the paint. He's a pretty decent scorer in the paint with that little jump hook. He's a good rebounder. He's a good defender. And he's a really good match with Evan Mobley. When you put all of the pressure on Mobley, then, you have that's a lot, because Evan Mobley is not a really smooth scorer. And then you're looking at the backups, and it's our friend Tristan Thompson coming off the bench, who, let's be honest, is not the Tristan Thompson of 8 or 9 years ago when he was playing with LeBron and winning championships in Cleveland. He is, a very limited player. They don't have a lot of backup bigs behind, Allen and Mobley. So that makes them thin. So I think the advantage is the Celtics because the Celtics are used to playing without Porzingis. The Cavaliers aren't the same without Allen. They're missing something. And they were able to hang on and win 2 of the last 3 games against the Magic. But I also think the Magic wasn't all that great. I think to me it was a matter of the competition as opposed to Cleveland just being that good, and also obviously Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, I will say Porzingis, and here's why. Well, yes, they have been able to play without him. They have been able to find success without him. I still get the sense that at some point in this series, Jared Allen is going to come back, and if that in fact happens, Porzingis' presence will be sorely missed because he has the ability to again help space the floor. And the Celtics have shown the ability. They're not a back to the basket, give points in the paint kind of team, but they do attack. They do look to finish with Jaylen Brown going to the cup, Peyton Pritchard doing some things, Tatum obviously another one that likes to attack the rim, and it's harder to do that when you have a twin tandem like Evan Mobley and Jared Allen back there. And the benefit of Porzingis was that he gives you the ability where those guys can essentially set up camp around the paint and be a nuisance because his ability to shoot from the perimeter is going to be would be a factor if he were able to play in this series. So I think his absence is the one that's going to really be felt in this series because again meets a need that is greater in this particular series if Jared Allen comes back, which I anticipate he will at some point. That the Celtics will need to make this not as difficult a second round matchup as it could be. They need Porzingis, and obviously they're not going to have him to make this real, I think, pretty easy. But without him, it just raises the degree of difficulty a little bit. But they're a better team, bottom line, when they have Porzingis, particularly in the series against a team that has not one but 2 major cogs in the middle.
Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is so easy to play. I can make my Celtic picks and make my entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals and easy gameplay and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. Celtics and NBA fans, you can get in on Prize Picks in 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. On Prize Picks this week, I'm selecting Jason Tatum to dish out more than 5 assists and his teammate Jaylen Brown to have more than 22.5 points. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Prize Picks.
So when you mentioned that next man up, Evan Mobley, Al Horford, which big do you think will make a bigger impact for their respective team?
Oh, I think it has to be Al, simply because Al is filling a void of a 20-point scorer. And he's not going to go out and get you 20 like Porzingis did, but he's got to be able to make an impact. And he's going to have more playing time to do that now that Porzingis, all likelihood, will not be playing in this series. So I think Al is the one that's going to be a little bit more impactful or be more important to his team's success because Mobley is going to do what he does regardless of who's out there. But Al's the one who has, I think, this ceiling of growth going into this series that's a little bit different for him as opposed to Mobley.
Yeah, Al's going to have a big impact. I also think the backups with Luke and even Xavier Tillman might have an impact. I think it's a lot of pressure on Mobley. Mobley's a guy who is good, but he's not going to get you 30 points in a game. He's just very solid, right? And I saw him in that series against Orlando hesitate offensively at times. He is not a polished offensive player. So I think you can exploit that. So that limits their points in the paint. We'll see when Jared Allen comes back. I think that's big. Also, our friend Dean Wade has not played in the playoffs, the one who had 20 points in the fourth quarter. That affects their depth. Cleveland does not have great depth. They're relying on guys like our friend Marcus Morris Sr., who got into the starting lineup for a couple of games during the Orlando series, can still knock down some threes. We mentioned Tristan Thompson. They got some guy, Georges Niang was basically like they didn't play him much in the last 3 games, and he's one of their sharpshooters. So we'll see the players that Cleveland unleashes in this series and whether they go deep into their bench. Their bench is not like a quality, consistent bench like the Celtics is, but I also think that there's a lot of pressure on Evan Mobley, and Cleveland's going to have to be just very good. Not only Mitchell, somebody's going to step up, average 25 points in this series for them to have a chance. And is that Garland? Is that Allen? If Allen plays, Allen in the 4 games against Orlando that he played averaged 17 and 14. So he was putting in that work. But they lost 2 of those games that he played too. So Cleveland is, as I said, Cleveland's a team that a few months ago they won 17 to 18. They were rolling. Then they finished the season 13 and 18. Like they lost 18 of their last 31 games. So they're a team I think that's more like that 13 and 18 team. Like they got some guys that can hurt you. They can play good defense. But if the Celtics do what they're supposed to do, even without Porzingis, I think they'll be fine.
All right, so let's take a look at the probably most popular matchup within this matchup, Tatum versus Donovan Mitchell. Let's start with Donovan. He needs to blank to win this matchup. What does Donovan Mitchell need to do?
Dominate. He's got to dominate. He has to be the best player on the floor for Cleveland to win this series, to frankly, to be competitive. Because we've seen, even when he's the best player on the floor, that may not be enough for them to win. I mean, he dropped a 50-piece, against Orlando and caught an L at the end of the night. That does not happen very often. It speaks to how his supporting cast has to step up. But Donovan, he has to be dominant, and he's shown the ability to do it in a multitude of ways. I think for the Celtics, the key in just limiting him is keeping him off the free throw line. He's able to get to the line a lot and make teams pay by just not defending him better. And so that to me, his ability to dominate games is going to be the key for Cleveland to have any shot at winning this thing.
Yeah, I think Donovan's got to not only be a scorer, but also get his teammates involved. And that's not one of those guys who's definitely like going to have 10 or 12 assists, but that's what he's going to need to do. He can't score 50 points with 2 assists. Like he's got to give it to his teammates. He's got to motivate Garland. I think he was really working on Garland. Garland really struggled in Game 7, and they came up with some big buckets down the stretch. So if I'm Mitchell, I'm motivating Garland. If they are a good 1-2 punch, Cleveland will be formidable, right? If Garland can drop 25 points and 10 assists, but I think their leader, I think for assists in the series was like 5 assists. Like they're not a great assist team. They are, and Mitchell's more of an individual guy. You give him the ball and you just watch him grow, so they're going to have to be a distributing team. They're going to need to rely on guys like Max Strus. Isaac Okoro's going to need to hit those corner threes that he has trouble with at times. There's going to be a lot of, quite honestly, guys that are going to have to step up for them to make this a series.
So what does Tatum need to do?
What do you think your boy Tatum need to do, Gary?
Tatum needs to be just a distributor. If it calls for him to score 25, 30 points, do that. If they're doubling, they're trapping him, they're trying to get the ball out of his hands, make the right play, make the right pass, get into the paint, throw some oops to Al, throw some oops to Jalen. Just be a complete player. That's what they need. Now, do they need him to score 40 points a game in this series? No, they don't. But they do need Tatum, one, to be a distributor and to be a good team player, share the ball. And also, it wouldn't hurt if he knocked down some 3-pointers and burn the defense if they try to double him or make the extra pass, or if they give him that 3, knock it down. Like just take what the defense gives you and exploit that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tatum needs to be impactful. And I think that has to really take precedence over anything and everything else he does, because he doesn't have to necessarily score to be impactful. He doesn't necessarily have to get his teammates heavily involved to be impactful. What he does have to do is have an impactful mindset that whatever I'm doing, I'm going to be the best player on the floor at that one thing. And whatever else I'm doing, I also have to be the best player on the floor doing that. That positions him to have the kind of impact that I think he and the Celtics are looking for in this game one. Because the one thing you don't want to do is lose that first game if you're the home team, because now all of a sudden game two becomes must win. You don't want to position yourself like that. So it's really important for Jason Tatum, for Jaylen Brown, for all those core guys to really put their imprint on the game early on and do the best that they can to create some distance from the outset so that we don't wind up with a, last minute uh, game decided in the last 30 seconds or minute or two. You want this game to be done and over with well before then. And if you're the Boston Celtics, that means lots of guys are going to have to contribute. Lots of guys are going to have to step up, but none bigger than Jason Tatum. Because really, when he's playing well and he's playing impactful basketball, the Celtics are an extremely difficult team to deal with. And I thought he played decent basketball, in the first round of the series, but there are many layers of levels that he can level up to his game based upon what happened there. And again, that's no shade at him. It's just the reality that he's that good a player. He can play better than he did. And it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out here in the coming weeks, or excuse me, in the coming days in this series.
Hey everyone, this is Kwani Lunis from the Big 3 NBA podcast. As you know, we are very excited to see where the Celtics end up throughout this playoff round. And of course, as a result, it's always cool to attend games when you're following along with your favorite teams. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. They have prices on their app that actually go down closer to tip-off, which makes it easier to get a good deal. And with killer last-minute deals and all-in prices, also a view from where your seat will be, they also guarantee low prices, and Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying those tickets. All you need to do when you're on the app is pick out a specific game or matchup. All you need to do is go into the app and pick out that Boston matchup that you'd like to attend, look for a good deal, and just either wait it out or select the ticket right away. They have different features in the app, such as customizing your spot. Take all the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's talk X factors. Starting with Cleveland, what will be the X factor for the Cavaliers?
For the Cavs, I think the X factor is probably going to be Jared Allen, and just whether he can play or not. If he can't play, this thing might be a sweep. If he can't play at all in the first 4 games, it would not surprise me at all if Cleveland were to get swept. If he is able to play, they got a fighting chance to make this a competitive series that goes 5 or 6 games. So his availability is going to be, I think, pivotal to how this series plays out. If he's not available, I'm leaning more towards a sweep than 5-game series. And if he is available, then I'm feeling good about them being gone in 5 games.
I think the X factor is Max Strus. If he can turn in like Strus, as much as he's considered a shooter, if you look at his numbers, he shot 35% last year for Miami from 3 and 35% this year. And he was 12 for 38 in the Orlando series. That's like about 30%. So he was not that knockdown shooter that people kind of view him as, because he's had some good stretches. So if you're Cleveland and he suddenly turns into a plus shooter, he suddenly turns into that guy who can shoot 40+% from 3 and knock down and make the Celtics pay for any of those defensive mistakes or miscues or leaving them open, then I think he becomes a major X factor for Cleveland. Now, can you rely on that? I don't know. He has not shown that this year. Now, we've had people, we've seen it. We've had players that didn't show it during the regular season, play the Celtics and suddenly turn into Steph Curry. But so that it's possible, but from what I've seen from Strus, that's just not been him this season. He can do other things. He can play some defense. He can slash to the rim, things like that on backdoors. But to me, if he's knocking down threes, if he's knocking down 42% of his threes and just becoming that perimeter weapon, that makes Cleveland more dangerous and does make him an X factor and does give them a better shot, obviously, at extending the series to 6 or 7 games.
What could Boston's X factor be then?
Go ahead, Sherrod.
Boston.
Go ahead.
Boston's X factor. There's a couple of different ones that you got to look at. As we talked about earlier, one guy that you have to give some thought to as an X factor is Derek White, who was the last couple of games for the Celtics. He was the best player for them in closing that series out. So that's a guy that you have to keep an eye on. Jaylen Brown, I think, is another one. Jaylen consistently floats below the radar, even though his numbers are front and center as the guy that can impact. And the third guy, last but not least, my X factor, because I think the Celtics have 3 legitimate ones. Jrue Holiday. I think he's a guy that this is the time where the money that you've spent invested in Jrue Holiday, this is when you're looking for the payoff. You're looking for him to not necessarily put up anything statistical that jumps out at you, but just, again, having significant impact. If he goes 3 for 10, but he makes all 3 shots in the fourth quarter, that stretches a 2-point lead into a 10-point lead. He's done his job because that's a clear example of him making a significant impact when it matters most. And that's really what he has to do. If I had to, from those 3, pick one, I'd probably go with Jrue Holiday as the primary X factor for the Celtics, simply because I think those other guys have had better seasons and they weren't necessarily brought in for this specific purpose. Whereas Jrue Holiday was brought in to help the Celtics get over the hump and win a championship.
Yeah, I'm going to say Jrue Holiday because I think defensively he's going to have an impact on Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. And I also think that he can score in this series. Leave him open from 3. I think he's going to knock him down. I think he can get the rim, hit the floater. So to me, I think, because I think it's, you can say Derek White, who's been an X factor in the Miami series, but I think he'll have Cleveland's attention in this series. I don't think that they're going to let him or try not to let him get loose like he did against Miami. I think that Jrue Holiday is going to be the guy who can take the step forward and be a more of an offensive force as well. Obviously, he's always been a defensive force and have a bigger impact on this series on both sides of the ball. I think it's Jrue Holiday.
All right. Well, the series begins this week. Stick with the Big 3 NBA podcast for the latest updates. And we appreciate you listening as always. Any final words about this series?
I feel that this is going to be a quick series.
Oh, okay.
I want to say 5 games.
Rooms?
My heart is saying it might be a sweep. My heart feels a sweep is coming. Because and again, I think Cleveland's a better team than Miami. Mm-hmm. I just don't think Cleveland has that one thing that can help them win a game in this series. Playing at home certainly is going to help them. They were able to take care of their business in the series at home, but the Celtics, I just think, are too deep, too talented to be denied. At a minimum, I expect the Celtics to get a split in Cleveland. Would not be surprised if they swept them though. And again, not shade at Cleveland. They're not as good as the Celtics. Point blank.
Yeah, I agree with Sherrod. I think it should be, I won't say, never say an easy series. I think if the Celtics do what they're supposed to do, they should take care of business and they should move forward to the next round. But they got to focus. Like, don't lose game 1 at home. Don't give Cleveland any confidence. Don't go back to Cleveland, having to win game 3. Don't do what you did against Miami, lose game 2, then suddenly you got don't give Cleveland any hope. I think Cleveland understands it's a decided underdog in this series, and I think there's kind of a sense of relief because Cleveland advanced past the first round. I think Bickerstaff saved his job with that series win. I think they were going to probably let him go or make a move if they had lost that game 7 to Orlando. So now it's sort of like they're playing with found money. They're playing with house money in a sense of just kind of, well, no one expects us to be here, so let's see what we can do. Right. And so they've got nothing to lose, but they've also got solid players. And if the Celtics, concentrate, lock in, they're a more conventional opponent than Miami. And I also forgot an X factor is our friend Karis LeVert, who has dominated the Celtics over the year, 52-point game when he was at Brooklyn. If that guy gets going, too. Now he hasn't, he's had a decent year. He had his moments in Orlando. So this is not a guy who's coming off a 35-point game. But if he gets going, that makes Cleveland even more dangerous. So that's a guy too who can come off the bench and score some points. So the Celtics need to be prepared for this team, for Garland, for Mitchell, obviously, for LeVert, for Strus, for Mobley, and we'll see what happens with Jared Allen. And I think they'll lock in. I think they prepared. They'll be well prepared with a good game plan in game 1 and try to hit first and take that first game.
Yeah, well, game 1 is Tuesday, as you mentioned, at home at the TD Garden. Game 2 is on Thursday, also in Boston. So, again, until we reconvene for the Big 3 NBA podcast, for Sherrod Blakely and Gary Washburn, I'm Kwani Lunis. We appreciate your time.